So, Our Flag Means Death Season 2 just released, and I want to talk about it. I've been a fan of the show since it came out in like 2012. Not sure how I got into it exactly, but I think a friend just told me to watch it, but that doesn't matter. After the first episode, I was pretty much just hooked onto the show. And with these three new episodes that came out like around a week ago, I really need to talk about it. Big warning though, this video will be containing a few spoilers of the first three episodes and bits of the first season. Episode 1, Impossible Birds. Also, a little side note, this will be a painfully small summary that I totally didn't steal off of the wiki of each episode, and I won't be talking about every scene in detail since I don't want this video to be like 3 hours long, and I'd like to get this out before episodes 4 and 5 release. Steed and Izzy sword fight on a beach, and Steed kills him as revenge for turning them over to the English.
You absolute.
Ed then comes running and the two reunite, but this is all a dream.
Worse than you moaning egg, oh egg all night long. Mm-hmm.
Also in this dream, Ed still has a beard, even though in the last season Ed ends up shaving his beard because of the whole Royal Pirating Academy thing or whatever it's called. And they force him to shave off his beard back in like episode 9. When Ed gives himself up to save Steed's life. Though why Ed still has his beard in the dream is a mystery to me. Though at first I thought it was Steed looking at Ed through rose-tinted glasses, which throughout the season becomes more obvious that Steed, he doesn't really like see the crimes that Ed has been doing, like beheadings and arson. And hopefully throughout later episodes, Steed realizes that Ed is pretty fucked up. But even with that, Steed would hopefully still love him unconditionally and help Ed through like processing all of these emotions just like he did with season 1. But if all that were true, then it would be Ed without the beard, since, to me at least, the beard is a symbol of toxic masculinity for Ed, which, I sound like a maniac, but hear me out. In the first season, it's pretty obvious that Ed is in conflict with toxic masculinity since throughout the show, he pushes his emotions down, only really showing anger towards others if needed because to him, that's what a pirate or a man needs to do to survive at sea. But Steed then shows him that it's okay to feel these emotions, that it's okay to be seen as weak and just be sad and everything like that. He helps him process all of these things along the way as well. Though I think the moment that Ed shaves his beard is when he finally accepts that it's okay to feel emotions, it's okay to feel weak, and it's okay to cry, and it's okay to feel love. He doesn't have to be a murderous monster everyone expects him to be. He's just able to be Ed. So, with all of this, why would he have the beard again in Steed's dream? I could be overthinking this, or there's like an underlining meaning to it that I'm too stupid to understand, but seeing how the whole dream scene plays out is probably just fanfic service. For the first 2 episodes, the crew is pretty much split up. Buttons, Pete, Alawande, Roach, Swede, and Wee John are all with Swede, while Izzy, Jim, Fang, Frenchie, and a new character, Archie, are with Ed. Just to make everything more simple, I'll be calling Steed's group Crew A, Ed's group Crew B. Crew A is on the Republic of Pirates and is pretty much out of money since Steed left all of his wealth with his ex-wife and with his children. They approach Jackie to ask for work. Initially she hesitates, but then agrees to take them on after seeing the Swede and immediately being attracted to him, which good for the both of them. Good for them. I hope they're happy. Meanwhile, on the Revenge is Crew B, raiding a wedding venue, with Ed becoming more and more unstable and bloodthirsty. The crew is in agreement that Ed is creating a toxic environment on the ship, and I'd also like to note the length of Ed's beard. It's not at its like full Blackbeard length, but with some very reliable Google searching, I'm guessing the time between season 1 and 2 is probably around 4-ish months, though I could be completely wrong about that. Alu and Steed then discuss their current problems with a soup vendor named Susan and her co-worker Auntie. Remember those two. Alu questions if Steed is afraid of Ed murdering him because, you know,
he's a fucking madman.
this is just something I like to note, that I love how whenever Steed says anything about Ed being
a good guy,
the scene immediately switches to Ed being not really a good guy. Like, here, Ed and Izzy talk, though what they talk about isn't that important. What is important is that Ed treats Izzy like actual shit, calling him a lightweight for not wanting to do drugs, and saying that Izzy is easily replaceable.
Can't do the job? Someone else will.
With how Izzy talks to the rest of the crew, Ed's attacks on him, both verbal and physical, are wearing him down, to the point he breaks down from the crew, based on how Izzy usually does act, someone who's closed off and aggressive. It's really out of character to see him crying and vulnerable. So, like, whatever Ed is doing to him within the 4 months between season 1 and 2, which I can only assume is degrading him and feeding him more of his toes, it's starting to affect Izzy negatively. I really do hope that throughout the season they touch more on Izzy's mental states, hopefully give him some kind of redemption arc, and hopefully give him some fucking therapy because he needs that. Jackie ends up kicking Crew A out, but keeps Swede as her 20th husband, which good for her, I guess. Steed is then approached by a man named Ricky Baines, but Ricky Baines is pretty much a carbon copy of earlier season Steed, someone who's like naive toward the pirate life. Ricky Baines is a former minor noble who has become a pirate. He tells Steed about a Roman puzzle chest that Jackie has in her possession that could potentially get them the money that the crew need. Steed goes to Swede asking him about it, and then Swede tells the crew about the chest despite his newfound loyalty to Jackie. This isn't really important. I keep saying that a lot, but Swede's and Jackie's relationship won't really affect the overall story like how other relationships will in this season, like Alawande's and Jim's relationship, and obviously Ed's and Steve's relationship. Though I do want to point out how sweet Swede is in the scene. It's adorable. Izzy then confronts Ed about his behavior and tells Ed that
I have love for you, Ed.
a lot of people have suspected that Izzy is in love with Ed, but we finally get that confirmation. Izzy is just finally tired of all of it, finally tired of like seeing the man he loves pine over someone else and being verbally abused and treated like trash. With all of this anger and frustration boiling up within him, all he got in return was a bullet. As much as I love Ed in the first season, he's kind of a dick in this one. I'm not saying it's unreasonable, and the writers did an amazing job with how he acts in the season. They portray him really good as, like, you know, he would act like a total fucking dick while he's trying to process everything that happened within the last season. But it's making me feel bad for Izzy out of all people. Ed dismisses this, and then Ed then goes out and interviews the whole crew at gunpoint, asking how they feel about things that are going on in Revenge. He displays suicidal ideation as he does so, pointing the gun at himself, and then Izzy puts a stop to all of this. He points out that
The atmosphere on this ship is fucked. Everyone knows why. Your feelings for Steed.
Which, as a result, Steed and his crew steal the pirate puzzle chest, but are then caught when Ricky accidentally gives them away with doing some dumbass bullshit. Susan then shows up and buys both the chest and the crew from Jackie, who Jackie ends up keeping sweet despite his betrayal. Susan is then revealed to be Sang-Yi Sao. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. I'm sorry if I am. Who is the Pirate Queen and Conqueror of China. The Pirate Queen, Sing Yi Sao, is an actual pirate in real life. I don't know if she actually conquered China in real life, though I do know that she was at least a pirate. The episode then ends with Steed saying,
Good night, Teach.
and then Ed and
Fuck you, Steve Bonnet.
there is also something else I'd like to note. I'm saying that a lot, but you know. Near the end of the episode, Ed and Frenchie are talking to each other, with Ed talking about a bird.
You know there's a bird that never touches ground? It's born in the air. Never once lands. Ends its entire existence in the sky. Never going back to land. We're gonna sail, rob, raise hell forever and ever without end.
It's pretty obvious what Ed means when he says this. Deeper meaning of this, Steed really did fucking hurt him, and he's in pain. The only thing he knows how to deal with this pain is by drinking, doing drugs, and, you know, raiding and being at sea. But even with this, it's clear that the pain is still there. Ed is like taking it out on everyone else in the crew, especially with Izzy. I do hope that throughout the season, Ed also gets a bit of help. Episode 2, Red Flags. Crew A adjusts to life on board Zing's ship, the Red Flag. All of them are fucking passed out, except for Steed, who is reminiscing about the time he had with Ed. Ed, on the other hand, is continuing to spiral. He still has the 2 wedding toppers. The woman in the dress is made to look like himself. He pushes them together and then he tips the 2 toppers overboard. Ed is desperately trying to get over Steed, but deep down, he really does miss him. Ed really does wish that what happened back in the pier had gone differently. He wishes that Steed was with him at that moment. Everything reminds him of Steed, and it's just breaking him. And all he can do is try to move on, which has been proven to be pretty difficult. Lucius is then revealed to be on the Red Flag, and nice reunion with the crew, resuming his relationship with the Black Pete. Yippee. Lucius initially lies to them about how he went missing from the Revenge, saying he fell, though the crew is pretty confused about this. Auntie is convinced that Buttons is at a sea witch who has taken a form of human and later on gives him a spell book or something, which probably has some meaning to it, but I'm too dumb to figure it out. Ed then asks if Frenchie killed Izzy. He tells him he did, and Izzy is alive. Izzy's leg has become infected because, this is back before actual good medicine was a thing. So it gets infected to the point it's rotting. And, the leg ends up getting amputated by Jim. Lucius then confronts Steed with the truth that Ed pushed him off the Revenge and says that Lucius, blames Steed for pretty much everything that happened, seeing how Steed breaking Ed's heart was the catalyst of all of this. Ed then suspects Izzy is alive because, that leg is freaking stanky, and then questions Frenchie about Izzy's supposed death. Jim and Archie kiss for some reason, despite Jim still thinking about the relationship with, Alu, which I really do hope that it doesn't lead to some kind of love triangle thing. Lucius and the crew are talking about whatever, and Lucius then yells at Black Pete, which is very unusual for Lucius because even with the first season, Black Pete does say some stuff that is pretty out of line, like how when Blackbeard leaves, he's like, Lucius doesn't stay quiet obviously, but he doesn't yell at him, just calls him out calmly. To see Lucius actually yell at Pete for something minor as a silly little nickname, it's kind of surprising. It shows that Lucius has definitely went through some shit. Ed finds Izzy in the hidden compartment. Ed then tells Izzy about a dream he had in which Izzy kills him and goads Izzy into trying to kill him with a pistol, but Izzy isn't able to do it, either because he knows that Ed is just using him to do what Ed can't do to himself, or because Izzy still really does love Ed, which is surprising because Ed really has been torturing Izzy. Izzy, please get some help. Ed then leaves Izzy with a gun, and a gunshot rings, suggesting that Izzy ended up shooting himself. Ed then says,
I loved you.
Best I could.
Meaning that Ed did at some point also return these feelings for Izzy at some point, and these feelings were probably there when the two were under a different captain and before Blackbeard was, Blackbeard, but the feelings eventually went away when Ed became captain. Ed then goes up on deck to begin steering the ship into an oncoming storm. I just want to give props to Izzy's actor, Con O'Neill. In every emotional scene with Izzy, you can just feel the pain radiating off of him. Just by the way he tears up in some scenes, it's really fucking sad to see Izzy in this mental state. And people hate him. First season, I did hate him because, he was ruining my OTP or whatever, but in this season, we're actually able to go in depth as to what Izzy is feeling. As I said before, I really do hope throughout the season we get more Izzy content and see how he feels about everything that's happened, and hopefully maybe go more in depth with his past with Blackbeard. Also, Con O'Neill is pretty hot, I'm not gonna lie. Lucius tells Steed about some of the horrible things he saw and did while trying to survive. Then the two talk about Ed, and Lucius is trying to convince Steed that Ed is just too broken.
Maybe the time he spent with you is the best it's ever gonna get for him.
With Ed's actions, Lucius does make a pretty fair point. Obviously, Steed doesn't know the extent to how badly he hurt Ed. He can only guess through, the crimes that he's been listing to try and find Ed, though we as viewers do, since we are able to see action Ed does and hearing pretty much every nasty remark he says to the man that was his first mate. Ed is so unstable that he takes his own crew into the storm on purpose, breaking the ship's wheels so that no one can steer them back out. He lines up a cannon with the intention of shooting a cannonball to the sail thingy. I don't know what that's called, and dooming them all. Ed then forces Jim and Archie to fight, saying, "Hold up, guys! I'm just hastening the process." Though Jim and Archie, they do comply at first, but Jim is like, nah. But then as Ed goes to light the fuse, Izzy appears, somehow walking with one leg like the actual unit he is, and then he shoots Ed in the arm, stopping him. Bang attacks Ed, knocking him to the deck, and the crew gather around as Jim raises a cannonball over their head with the intent to kill. As the episode ends, Archie moves a couple of boats on the Abacus, and then it shows a little bit of a line of boats crossing land. In the next scene, there's a bunch of women pulling these boats through a forest, which they look very similar to the Red Flag, with the fact that there's bird cages, just has the same infrastructure and everything like that. So it's safe to assume that these boats belong to Singh. I wasn't able to figure out exactly where this was. At first I thought it was South America, but when I compared the world map with the Abacus map, it just didn't really line up. But I kinda still think it's near Panama and all that, based on some events in the trailer. I do think that this will have some relation to the overall plot. Episode 3, The Innkeeper. Aluwande and Steed assist Zhang in the surrender of a ship under Captain John Bartholomew. Under Captain John. Zhang is able to persuade the captain to join her cause, with pirates fighting together as partners instead of fighting each other. Kind of shows how Zhang does her stuff, but she isn't afraid to.
There's always the second option.
Auntie then announces that they have come upon another boat, which turns out to be the Revenge. Steed throws himself overboard and swims in it in hopes to finally finding Ed, which I just want to say is kind of impressive how Steed manages to swim that whole gap. What he finds instead, though, is the ship in ruin from the storm, and Jim, Frenchie, Fang, Izzy, and Archie surviving by eating dead birds with their bare hands. The ships mingle next to each other, and no one tells Steed what exactly happened to Ed, saying that he quote-unquote retired. But as stated in the last season, pirates don't retire, they just die. Auntie advises Zing to kill the crew they found on the Revenge because she strongly suspects that there was a mutiny. Ed, meanwhile, has washed ashore on a deserted island and was saved by a man who ends up dragging him to safety. The man is then revealed to be Captain Hargold, or Ben, whom Ed previously served under before his days as Blackbeard. Ed is not that fond of him.
Fuck you, I'm not eating that! Fuck off! Fuck off!
Auntie surveys the deck of the Revenge and is able to deduce that the crew overpower Ed and her suspicions of mutiny were correct. Jim tells Alu about their relationship with Archie. Izzy and Steed have a confrontation in the captain's quarters on the Revenge. Steed trying to figure out exactly what happened to Ed, knowing that he wouldn't just leave.
He was either going to watch the world burn or die trying, so which was it?
Kind of shows that Steed does know the type of man Ed is, but still chooses to kind of ignore it. Ed then explains how Ed kind of went insane and how Ed took his leg all because he
Dare to mention your fucking name.
And they ultimately had to desert him on a beach as Izzy would never send him to
doggy heaven.
Izzy then blames Ed's mental state on the two of them, which he is right about. On Steed's side of this, he showed Ed compassion, care, and a type of love he never really felt before. In a sea of people, who are out to hurt Ed, there's Steed, welcoming him with open arms and showing him how it to feel like himself again. But Steed was the same person who ended up taking that all away, leaving Ed hurt and destroyed. Izzy, on the other hand, showed him that the only way Ed can deal with the pain is by being a monstrous pirate, bottling up all of his emotions and only really showing his anger to everyone. With Steed leaving and Izzy's influence, this pushed Ed on edge, causing Ed to become the worst version of himself. And Izzy then also reveals the danger they're in with Zing because of mutiny, but Ben tells Ed he needs to either move on or die. Zing and Steed discuss the mutiny as Steed tries to persuade her to let the crew live. Ed does this kind of roleplay thing with Ben as since Ed talks about how he wanted to be an innkeeper at some point, and then the two roleplay as that. Though it kind of escalates because, and then the two start to fight, and Ed loses his temper when Ben brings up how Ed killed his own father and how he knows that Ed thinks himself as unlovable. Ed then kills Ben, but then Ben comes back. Auntie then discovers that Ed's body is in the hidden compartment and shows it to Zing and Steed, which Steed is obviously pretty devastated about this. Archie, Jim, Izzy, Frenchie, and Fang are consequently jailed on the Red Flag. Ed then realizes he's on the brink of death in real life and the island's purgatory, or
Gravy basket.
with Ben merely an extension of subconsciousness. Ben explains Ed now has to either decide whether to live or die. Ed is unsure, feeling as if he should live, but knows that nobody will be waiting for him. Remember in the first episode, Steed has a dream on a beach, and now Ed is in some sort of purgatory on a beach? Both events aren't real, and they're both something that was made up each of the men's mind. There could be some connection that the two did kiss on a beach of some sorts. So it makes sense that the place where Steed probably had his happiest moment would be the place where he sees Ed again in a dream world. And that for Ed, it was also probably where he had the happiest moment in his life, but it's a double-edged sword because the man he shared that moment left him. So in a way, it could make sense as to why he'd be in purgatory there. Ollie tries to bargain with Zing to save the crew, and Zing expresses jealousy over his relationship with Jim. The two make out, and Steed breaks everyone out of jail. While that happens, they steal the Red Flag's wheel, and they make their escape onto the Revenge. But Jim notices that Alu is missing, so they go after him. Auntie then alerts Zing what's going on, and she goes to deal with the situation, giving Alu the time to escape with Jim. Stuck without his wheel, Zing is just like, what the fuck? And Alu just waves at her as he leaves with the others, which is just like, why? Ben and Ed stand at the edge of a cliff where Ben tells Ed that he's already made his choice, and then a rope appears around Ed's waist, weighted with a rock. The two argue again, and then Ben says that,
Fuck, you're as thick as pig shit. I'm not me, I'm you.
and then Ed says,
I hate you. I've always hated your guts.
And then he realizes that if he hates Ben, who was supposedly Ed, then Ed hates Ed. And then he confesses that he's too scared to do anything about how he thinks himself as unlovable. Ben then throws the rock and Ed falls over the edge into the water, where Ed begins to drown. Now, get ready for the most heart-wrenching scene ever, which made me cry twice, unfortunately. As Ed falls into the water, he accepts his fate, ready for death, while in real life, Steed waits beside Ed's body, apologizing for everything he did. Steed then removes the cloth off of Ed's face, triggering something in Ed. Ed then hears him as he begins to talk, realizing that someone is actually waiting for him. The rope tied around his waist is unraveled, while Ed's hand in the real world starts to twitch, which Steed notices. Steed holds on to his hand, begging for Ed to wake up. Purgatory Ed envisions Steed saving him in the form of a merman, smiling lovingly as he sees him. The two look at each other as Steed's voice echoes in the background, promising never to leave Ed again. Ed finally wakes up, holding Steed's hands tightly. This scene, oh my god. Even after watching it a couple of times, I can never seem to get over it. The way Ed looks at Steed and how Steed is just so happy to see him awake is just, I can't describe it. David Jenkins, you fucking bastard. Anyways, now that small recap thing and my horrible commentary is over, I can now talk about what might happen for the other episodes. To begin with, Ricky is most definitely out for Steed for leaving him behind, joining the Navy at some point, seeing how Ricky lost his nose. In the trailer, there's like a dude without his nose, and it's kind of safe to assume that that's Ricky. So now he's out for piracy, and specifically Steed. Though Ricky does at some point talk to Izzy in the trailer, and with the way that Izzy talks to him, Ricky still has some sort of distorted look as to what piracy is. I also do hope that there won't be any sort of love triangles, especially between Archie, Jim, and Alu, but seeing how their whole situation is, it might happen. Or they might end up in a poly relationship, who knows. The old guy in the torture scene and Ben, I've seen people say that they might be the same person, but I don't think they're gonna be the same person. While they do look the same, Ben is most likely dead. That, or they are the same person and this is some kind of supernatural thing, which isn't too far out of the picture, since they do touch on the supernatural thing with the whole purgatory thing, and the fact that Archie, Jim, and Alu are seen with the garlic necklaces and holding up crosses for vampires or something. I don't know. Wee John, I at least I think it was Wee John, did bring up the Bermuda Triangle before, and with its history about it being haunted or filled with beasts or something, it would make some sense that there would be some sort of supernatural presence torturing everyone. And with the fact that Zing's ships from episode 2 would be near that area of the point in Florida, there's some kind of connection there, but it doesn't really make sense as to why our crew would be there. Though it could be something else. Who knows? I'm not a good theorist. Though I do believe once Ed wakes up, though, it won't really be that pleasant. When I was writing the script, I originally thought that in around episode 5 or 4, Ed will end up leaving the crew, going off on his own. But I ended up finding a few behind the scene photos of season 2 through a Reese Darby fan account, which not only disqualifies my theory from earlier, but may or may not add to my little beach scene note. Seeing how in the last photo, two of them are not hugging each other, just holding each other, and what kind of connection does the beach have with this? I don't know. But I ended up finding the video where all of these photos are from, though I don't know where the last photo is from exactly. Probably I don't know. I'm not gonna lie, I have no idea. Probably some article or something about the show and behind the scenes. But I did end up finding a video called Our Flag Means Death Season 2, Kiwi's leading the way, which is where most of the photos are from. The whole video is just some behind the scenes content, which shows how amazing the crew is as a whole. They have a whole ass ship. It's fucking amazing. I do want to focus on the small tidbits of the video, which does show some scenes from season 2, which most of the clips are too small to actually use as evidence or foundation for a theory, but there are a few clips that I do want to point out. The first clip is around 30 seconds in, which Steed is in Jackie's bar wearing a completely different shirt from the first 3 episodes. He's wearing like a blue shirt and a little gold hoop earring, he looks cute in that, I'm not gonna lie. But he says, what I can guess is that he's doing his Steed thing and talking about piracy. But then there's another scene later on in the video. He's also getting fucking wasted. And Ed is looking at him pretty either worried or disappointed. So what I'm gonna say is that this scene takes place at the same time in which the trailer, Jackie and Ed are talking about Ed's normal guy phase. Steed is probably like drinking because Ed either rejected him and he's just trying to drink away his sorrows, or he's just having fun. I don't know. But these 2 clips do show that Ed doesn't leave the crew at any point, or at least he does for like a little bit to do, I don't know, some soul searching or something, trying to process that Steed is back, but he does eventually come back. Also, in the video, Con O'Neill is wearing like a navy coat for some reason. Either he's cold and just has it on because there's no other jackets, which I doubt since he's in all leather and leather is pretty fucking hot. Or 2, in the show, Izzy has to put that jacket on to like disguise himself, but why? My guess is that Izzy sneaks into the Navy or some shit, either talk to Ricky since in the trailer he does do that, or I don't know, to fucking raid them or some shit. Then a minute and 3 seconds in, there's a clip in which Steed is looking at Ed with a little smile, which if he was pissed at him wouldn't really make sense. I do hope that with this season, Ed doesn't like immediately forgive Steed, but there will be like a little moment where Ed is like still pissed off at Steed, but then after a while with like talking to people like Jackie, he eventually confronts Steed and the 2 talk it out, and then they're like back together again or whatever. So at this point, Ed has forgiven Steed. There's also like a group of people around Steed, not sure what that deal is. Later on in the video, they're like cheering him on or something, but knowing how Steed is, he's probably just yapping about his time at sea and with Ed or something. After that, there's like a scene where Ed and Steed are like some kind of carnival, festival, fair or something, which Steed is wearing something different once again, this time a red shirt. So like, I don't know, the 2 are either on a date or something, no clue. In the next clip, Steed is on the ground with people running around and something's on fire, which would mean there's some kind of raid, but this time Steed is wearing a blue shirt, which means it's probably happening before the carnival scene, since I do think that I'm making a timeline all based off like what Steed's wearing. But first is like white shirt and then blue shirt and then red shirt, which I could be completely wrong, but who knows. Now that I think about it, with like the trailer scenes with Steed and Izzy raiding a ship, I'm just either Ed is like trying to stay far away from Steed, but then he still like commands the crew and everything, gets them to like rage stuff, but I don't know. With the whole like raid thing, we might see a raid of some sorts on land, either at Republic Pirates or in a different place. Also in episode 4, Bonnie might pop up. The scene with her in the trailer, both Steed and Ed are like wearing the same clothing as where it left off episode 3. What that torture scene is, like with them at the boat and everything like that, I have no idea what's going on there though. Yeah, no, I think that's pretty much it for what I have to say about the first 3 episodes and like what I think is gonna happen later on. So that's pretty much it. I'm fucking done.